At age 18, Maya was a dedicated, amazing, and a sweet girl. But life became cruel when the unimaginable happened. It was time to say goodbye to all she had ever known. 18 years of thinking she was loved and accepted, everything went down the drain when she discovered it was a facade and she was just there to be used and taken advantage of. Mom and Dad, or the people she thought were her birth parents, were just liars and users and perfect actors. Because how did she not notice that she didn't look like either of them? She never had a reason to wonder, because she felt loved and cared for. Finding out that they only took her in just to become recipients of her inheritance was truly heartbreaking, and they were able to get it because they lied that she was mentally unstable and were shipping her off to a mental hospital. It was a well-crafted plan. They brought her up to be a spoilt brat, so she acted up often in front of others, and it was easily believed that she wasn't truly okay mentally. She was so stupid to not have noticed, and now everything is gone, and she is left with nothing. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stood in the empty hallway. The silence was deafening. Her eyes wandered to the old photograph on the wall. They were all smiles. Vera and David and herself, and she alone was left to confront the painful truth that underneath the smiles was a face filled with lies. Vera came in. Maya thought, "Oh, I can't call her Mom anymore, and her chest hurts." She silently prayed. Let this all be a dream, she hoped. But it wasn't, as Vera's face was filled with a victorious smile as she casted her a look filled with contempt. Her eyes said what her mouth didn't. Vera stretched her hands holding a white envelope and said, "Take this and start a new life somewhere else, and be grateful we are not truly sending you to a mental hospital." The welled-up tears in Maya's eyes rolled down, and she desperately wished for a savior, but no one came forth, as all the maids kept quiet, and no one stood up for her. She heard Vera's voice. "The tears won't change anything. It's time for you to leave because I'm throwing a party tonight." Ah, a party to celebrate my demise, thought Maya. But she couldn't open her mouth to say the things in her mind. But she hoped for the one day she would be back to take all that was taken from her. As she wheeled her travel box with her out of the door, she casted one more look at the place she once had a home and a family. She felt weak to her knees, and she sobbed with everything in her, but she knew she had to go. Maya stood up, dusted herself, and left, thinking of how she would survive and hoping that fate has something good for her here on out. But reverse was the case. Her first big mistake was using all the money she had to lodge at a 5-star hotel for the first night. But who could blame her? She was used to a life of luxury, and reality dawned on her a little later when she tried using her credit cards and found out they had been blocked. She was devastated and had to think of her next plan. She thought of anyone she could go to, but realized she didn't have any, as she wasn't that welcoming to people, and she regretted the life she had lived. As Maya stood alone on the streets, the harsh reality of her situation hit her like a ton of bricks. She had never felt so lost and abandoned in her life. The tears began to flow uncontrollably as she thought about everything she had lost. She remembered the happy times, the laughter, and the memories she had made with the people she thought were her family. But it was all a lie. They had used her, manipulated her, and discarded her like trash. Maya's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her stomach growling. She hadn't eaten all day, and the realization hit her that she had no money, no food, and no home. She felt like she was staring into the abyss, with no safety net to catch her or night to save her. As she walked aimlessly, Maya stumbled upon a small park. She collapsed onto a bench, defeated. She buried her face in her hands and wept, mourning the loss of her innocence, her family, and her sense of self. Maya lifted her head, staring at the hollow sun as it began to set, and her eyes fell upon a delicate flower blooming in the crack of a rock beside the bench. It was a tiny, resilient thing, thriving in the midst of concrete and steel. This gave her hope as she realized that she, too, could be like that flower. She could find a way to bloom in the darkest of places, to rise above the pain and the heartache. With newfound determination, Maya stood up, wiped away her tears, and began to walk. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to keep moving forward. As she disappeared into the night, the small flower on the bench seemed to whisper a message to her. You are strong, you are resilient, and you will survive. You will bloom again, and your beauty will be more radiant than ever. With this newfound hope, Maya was more determined than ever to make sure she gets her life in order and regain everything she lost. As the sun began to set, Maya saw a small farmhouse in the distance. She walked towards it, hoping to find shelter and rest, and luck was on her side this time. As she approached the house, a kind-faced old woman opened the door and smiled. "Welcome, child," the old woman said. "You look like you could use a hot meal and a warm bed. Come in, come in." Maya hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do, but something about the old woman's kind face put her at ease. She smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude, and stepped inside. The old woman's name was Mrs. Jenkins, and she lived alone in the farmhouse. She took Maya in, feeding her a hot meal and giving her a warm bed to sleep in. Over the next few days, Maya helped Mrs. Jenkins with the chores around the farm. She learned how to milk cows, feed chickens, and tend to the garden. It was hard work, something she wasn't used to, but it was also strangely satisfying, and she loved the challenge. As Maya worked, she began to open up to Mrs. Jenkins. She told her about her past, about the people who had used and abandoned her. Mrs. Jenkins listened, her face filled with compassion and understanding. "You're safe now, child," Mrs. Jenkins said. "You're safe, and you're loved." Maya felt a lump form in her throat as she looked at Mrs. Jenkins. She realized that she had found a true friend, someone who cared about her for who she was. As the days turned into weeks, weeks into months, Maya grew stronger. She learned to trust herself, to trust others. She learned to love again, to open her heart to the possibility of hurt. But Maya also knew that she couldn't stay with Mrs. Jenkins forever. She had to make a life for herself, to find her own way in the world. So, with a heavy heart, Maya said goodbye to Mrs. Jenkins. She thanked her for her kindness, for her love, and she set off into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Maya walked away from the farmhouse, she felt a sense of hope that she hadn't felt in a long time. She reminisced on who she was some years back when she was chased out of her home and compared it to how different it is this time because Mrs. Jenkins made sure she knew there was a place to come back to if things gets difficult, and that comforted her. It was an assurance she didn't know she needed. Maya knew she had a long way to go, but she also knew that she was ready for whatever came next. Maya walked for hours, her feet carrying her through the rolling hills and green pastures of the countryside. she felt a sense of peace wash over her, a sense of calm that she hadn't felt in years. As the sun began to set, Maya saw a small town in the distance. She walked towards it, hoping to find a place to rest for the night. As she entered the town, Maya was struck by its beauty. The buildings were old and charming, with steeply pitched roofs and half-timbered walls. The streets were narrow and winding, with flowers and trees planted along the way. Maya walked through the town, taking in its sights and sounds. She felt a sense of wonder and excitement, a sense of possibility that she hadn't felt in a long time. As she walked, Maya noticed a small cafe on the corner of the street. It looked cozy and inviting, with a warm light spilling out of the windows. Maya felt a sudden pang of hunger and decided to go inside. The cafe was warm and welcoming, with a fire crackling in the fireplace. Maya took a seat at the bar and ordered a cup of coffee and a slice of pie. As she waited for her food to arrive, Maya noticed a young man sitting at a table by the window. He was staring out at the street, a look of deep concentration on his face. Maya felt a sudden jolt of recognition, as if she had seen the young man before, but she knew that she hadn't, that she had never met him in her life. As her food arrived, Maya took a bite of her pie and closed her eyes in rapture. It was the best pie she had ever tasted, with a flaky crust and a sweet, tangy filling. As she ate, Maya couldn't help but sneak glances at the young man by the window. She felt a sense of curiosity about him, a sense of wonder about what he might be thinking and feeling. As she finished her pie, Maya decided to take a chance and introduce herself to the young man. There's no harm in trying, she thought. She got up from her seat at the bar and walked over to his table. "Hi," Maya said, feeling a sense of nervousness. "My name is Maya. I couldn't help but notice you sitting here, staring out the window. Is everything okay?" The young man looked up at Maya, startled. He had been so lost in thought that he hadn't even noticed her approaching. "Oh, hi," he said, smiling. "My name is Max." "Yeah, everything's fine. I was just lost in thought, I guess." Maya smiled back at Max, feeling a sense of connection to him. "I know how that is," she said. "Sometimes I get lost in thought, too. It's like my mind is a million miles away." Max nodded, his eyes sparkling with interest. "Exactly," he said. "It's like my mind is a puzzle, and I'm trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together." Maya laughed, feeling a sense of excitement. "I love puzzles," she said. "I'm always trying to figure out how things work, how people think and feel." Max smiled, his face lighting up with enthusiasm. "Me too," he said. "I love trying to understand people, to figure out what makes them tick." As Maya and Max talked, they realized that they had a deep connection. They shared the same interests, the same passions, the same sense of wonder and curiosity. As the night wore on, Maya and Max found themselves lost in conversation. They talked about everything and nothing, their words flowing easily and effortlessly. As the cafe began to close, Maya and Max reluctantly said their goodbyes. They exchanged numbers, promising to meet up again soon. As Maya walked out of the cafe, she felt a sense of excitement and possibility. She had met someone special, someone who shared her passions and interests. It felt good that for the first time in her life she met someone she could connect with. Could this be love, she thought, but a counterthought came in, saying falling in love is the last thing you need. Now, Maya, and she agreed with the voice in her mind. She had to think of how to carry out her next plan in this new phase of her life. Luckily for her, Mrs. Jenkins gave her some money enough for her to start up a new life. She was filled with so much gratitude to Mrs. Jenkins at that moment. It's a bright new day, Maya thought. But first she had to look for a job and also get a place to stay, but she didn't know where to start, so she decided to go back to the cafe. Luckily for her, there was a vacancy for a server, and she got the job. Maybe it was obvious to them that she really needed the job, and it was a 2-in-1 offer as it came with a room to stay. And she was very glad. For the first time in a while, she felt like fate had a lot of good things in store for her. She threw herself to the job and constantly hoping that one day Max would visit the cafe again. But as the days go by, Max didn't, and she at some point forgot about him. 1 year later, she is now the manager of the cafe, and it was an amazing feat. Who would have thought that Maya, a once rich, spoilt brat, could do so well for herself? She felt so proud of herself, but she didn't expect to be surprised by an August visitor. She was in her office when she heard a commotion in the cafe, and she came out to see, and to her surprise, it was a very familiar face. Vera, she thought, and as if she heard her name, Vera turned and saw Maya. But from the look on her face, she didn't recognize Maya. This made Maya infuriated. How can it be that the one who ruined my life didn't even recognize me? Maya's thought was cut short when she heard that oddly familiar voice saying, "Are you the manager?" Maya clenched her fist and had to politely answer, "Yes, I am. What can I help you with?" She was so pissed at this sick joke fate was playing on her. Why? She thought. But it's a good thing she doesn't recognize me. Apparently, Vera went on and on about how the servers were poorly trained and a lot of other things. Maya had to apologize for the inconveniences through clenched teeth, but she had no choice. Regardless of how Vera isn't evil, she had to perform her obligation as the manager of the cafe, and that is to make sure the customers are comfortable. Maya got to find out that Vera and David had newly gotten a property in the area, and she didn't know if she was to be happy that they are closer to her, and that makes her revenge easy, or she should be angry that after everything they've done to her, life seemed to be good to them. Vera looked as beautiful as ever, as much as it pained Maya to agree. The years didn't do much to her. She looked gracious and carried herself with so much confidence, and she saw that they have a daughter. While watching them together at the cafe one day, she saw how loving Vera was to her daughter, and she felt a pang of pain in her chest. She told herself she is over the hurt and pain, but it seemed that wasn't true, but she had a sweet revenge to plan regardless. She thought of spiking their coffee, and while she watched them choke on their own blood, she will appear in front of them with a victorious smile and let them know who she is. But she couldn't do that, as that would tarnish the good image of the cafe. She remembered how the cafe looked inviting and welcoming when she first got here. She would like to maintain that image for other people that might be in the same situation as her, or even more painful situation. As Maya continued to watch Vera and her family, she couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. She was angry and hurt by the way Vera and David had treated her. Maya's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the cafe's door opening. She turned to see a group of customers walking in, and she quickly put on a smile to greet them. As the day went on, Maya found herself constantly looking over at Vera and her family. She was fascinated by the way they interacted with each other, and she couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. Despite her mixed emotions, Maya was determined to keep her cool. She knew that she couldn't let her feelings get the best of her, not in front of the customers. As the lunch rush came to an end, Maya took a deep breath and walked over to Vera's table. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked, trying to sound as friendly and courteous as possible. Vera looked up at her and smiled. "No, thank you," she said. "We're all set." Maya nodded and turned to leave, but not before catching a glimpse of Vera's daughter. The little girl was staring up at her with big, curious eyes, and Maya couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. As she walked away from the table, Maya couldn't help but wonder what her life would have been like if Vera and David had been her real parents. Would they have loved her and cared for her? Or would they have treated her the same way they had treated her when she was living with them? Maya pushed the thoughts aside and focused on getting through the rest of the day. She knew that she couldn't change the past, but she could control how she reacted to it. As the day drew to a close, Maya felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had made it through another day, and she was one step closer to achieving her goals. As she locked up the cafe and headed home, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had come a long way since she had first arrived in town, and she knew that she was capable of overcoming any obstacle that came her way. Over the next few weeks, Maya found herself constantly running into Vera and her family. They seemed to be everywhere she went, and Maya couldn't help but feel like she was being haunted by her past. Despite the awkward encounters, Maya was determined to keep her cool. She knew that she couldn't let her feelings get the best of her, not when she had come so far. As the days turned into weeks, Maya began to notice that Vera and her family were becoming more and more familiar. They were starting to feel like a part of her life, and Maya couldn't help but wonder if she was starting to forgive them. The thought sent a shiver down Maya's spine. She didn't know if she was ready to forgive Vera and David, not after everything they had put her through. As she walked home from the cafe one evening, Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of uncertainty. She didn't know what the future held or how she was going to react when she saw Vera and her family again. All she knew was that she had to keep moving forward. She had to keep pushing herself to be the best version of herself, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As Maya walked, the sun began to set behind her. The sky was painted with hues of orange, and Maya couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over her. But little did Maya know, her past was not done with her yet. Vera and David had a secret, one that would change everything Maya thought she knew about her life. But as she turned the corner, Maya saw a figure standing in the shadows. It was a woman, and she looked familiar. As Maya got closer, the woman stepped forward. It was Vera, and Maya was shocked. But she had to act as if she didn't know who she was. Maya? She called her name and gave her a funny look that caught Maya off guard. She thought that they didn't recognize her, not knowing Vera did, but pretended all along. "Don't be shocked, dear," said Vera. "I knew who you were all along, but just decided to play along." She had that same victorious smile on her face, as she did when she chased her out of the house. Maya looked so confused, but she told herself that she is much more stronger than she was before, and she wouldn't allow herself to be bullied again. She answered her by saying, "It was also fun acting as if I didn't know you." Vera raised her brows, surprised that Maya dared to speak back to her, but she kept her cool. After all, they needed her. But it looks like this wasn't going to be easy. But she had to try. Almost in a flash, Vera had a pitiful look on her face and said, "Maya, my dear, I'm sorry for all we put you through. We were looking for you, but we couldn't find you, no matter how much we searched. And it was like a miracle when we found you here, but we couldn't approach you because you acted like you didn't know us, and that was quite painful." As much as Maya knew this was a lie, a facade, she desperately wished it was true, that they actually wanted her back, but she was also ready to play along to Vera's games. Maya said, "I didn't act like I didn't know you. I actually don't know you," and she walked off. The next day at the cafe, Maya resumed for work as usual and went about her day. Everything was going well until Vera decided to show up with her daughter Ella, and as if the hurt wasn't enough, they had to recruit an innocent child into their evil plan. Maya felt a heart stopped when Ella walked up to her, wrapped her little arms around her legs, and called her auntie. Vera said, "Maya, forgive us, at least because of Ella. She hasn't done anything wrong, and she deserves the love of a big sister." Maya was too stunned to speak, but she had some goodness left in her heart as she picked up little Ella. "I would just play long with them," she thought. As Maya held Ella in her arms, she couldn't help but feel a sense of compassion towards the innocent child. Despite the pain and hurt that Vera and David had caused her, Maya knew that Ella was not to blame. She made a decision in that moment to be there for Ella, to show her the love and care that she deserved. Over the next few weeks, Maya found herself spending more and more time with Ella. She took her to the park, read her bedtime stories, and played games with her. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, Maya couldn't deny the bond that was forming between them. As Maya got to know Ella better, she realized that the little girl was just as much a victim of Vera and David's manipulation as she was. Ella was a sweet, innocent child who deserved a chance at a happy and fulfilling life. On their way back from the park one evening, she brought Ella back to the house, as always, and she overheard Vera speaking to someone saying, "We are getting close to it. I just need to make her sign the documents. She is now very attached to Ella, and that would make it easy to get her to sign the documents. I'm so glad we got to find out there were more properties left in her name at a time we actually needed it." Vera laughed cynically, and Maya felt sad and was about to leave when she saw who Vera was talking to, Max. She couldn't believe her eyes that it was Max. She was shocked. She hadn't seen him since their first encounter at the cafe years ago, and she wondered how he was, and finding out that he is in this with Vera made her really angry, and she vowed to find out and take her revenge. She knocked and went inside the room and said to Vera without looking at Max, "I already put Ella to sleep, and I will take my leave now." Before Vera could say anything, Max stood up and said, "Maya, is that you?" A hint of recognition showing on his face, she acted surprised and said, "Max, it's been a long time," while moving in to give him a hug. Vera looked amused at the whole drama going on in front of her and decided to step in by asking, "Max, do you know Maya?" Max nodded and proceeded to explain that they met at the cafe when he came to scout a property for Vera some years back. Vera smiled and gave them room to catch up, not knowing how she would break it to Max that Maya is the person they are about to scam because, from the look on his face, he seemed to be interested in her. But then again, she thought Max could be an helpful tool if she could influence him to her favor. Maya and Max reminisced on the past and how life has been for both of them. Their interest in each other was obvious. But Maya didn't know if it should be acted on considering the peculiarity of the situation, as she didn't know much about Max's true involvement with Vera. And until she found out, she had to be careful. Max, on the other hand, felt happy and was sure of his feelings after they met that day at the cafe and exchanged numbers. He was hoping to get in touch with her and let their relationship progress from there, but unfortunately on his trip back home, he got robbed, and it took a while for him to recover from the ordeal, as he was deprived of all his possessions and also beaten to a pulp. He woke up in the hospital a few days later, and it took some days for him to adjust to his environment and also get better. And by the time he remembered Maya, there was no way to get in touch with her, and he also couldn't come back to the place he met her, so he moved on with his life. Meeting her again, surreal and unexpected, because after the short conversation with her, he was unable to meet anyone he shared such an outstanding connection with, and he had always hoped to meet her again. But would things work out between them, considering how he was unable to get in touch with her after meeting her then? Max decided to allow fate to decide after all fate brought them back together. Max proceeded to ask her if she worked with Vera, and Maya said no. They exchanged contacts again with Max, promising to reach out to her this time unfailingly. When Maya got home, she wondered why she couldn't tell him who she was to Vera, and also wondered if Vera would tell Max the truth, or if Max knew who she was, but was also in on playing her. After all the conversation between them that she heard insinuated that Max works for Vera and knows about her plan. Maya pondered more on the new properties she heard them talking about, and wondered why there was no one trying to get in touch with her concerning this. Apparently, the law wasn't on her side, because no one is willing to fight for her, so she has to fight for herself. And she decided to find out about the property and also Max's role in all of this. Maya spent the rest of the night researching and trying to find any information about the properties Vera had mentioned. She couldn't shake off the feeling that she was about to be used yet again, and she needed to get to the bottom of it. As she scrolled through her computer, Maya stumbled upon a website that caught her attention. It was a real estate website, and as she browsed through it, she found a listing for a property that seemed familiar. It was one of the properties Vera had mentioned, and as Maya read through the description, she realized that it was indeed one of the properties that was supposedly left to her. Maya's heart was racing as she continued to read. She couldn't believe that Vera had been lying to her all along. She felt a wave of anger wash over her, and she knew that she had to confront Vera about this. This time, she wasn't the 18-year-old girl who couldn't fight for herself. The next day, Maya decided to pay Vera a visit. She arrived at Vera's house, her heart pounding in her chest. As she knocked on the door, she could feel her anger building up inside her. Vera answered the door, a smile on her face. "Maya, darling, what brings you here today?" Maya's eyes narrowed. "I know what you're trying to do, Vera. I know about the properties, and I know that you're trying to scam me." Vera's smile faltered, and for a moment Maya saw a glimmer of fear in her eyes. But then Vera's expression changed, and she looked at Maya with a mixture of anger and disdain. "How dare you?" Vera spat. "You ungrateful little brat! I took you in, gave you a home for 18 years, and this is how you repay me, by accusing me of scamming you?" Maya's eyes flashed with anger. "You're the one who's been lying to me, Vera. You're the one who's been using me for your own gain, and I'm not going to let you get away with it this time." Vera sneered at Maya. "You're just a foolish little girl. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. But fine, if you want to play it that way, then let's play. And I got away with it before, and I will get away with it again," she added. And with that, Vera turned and walked away, leaving Maya standing in the doorway, feeling more determined than ever to take Vera down. As Maya walked back to her apartment, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She knew that she had just declared war on Vera, and she had no idea what the consequences would be. But she was determined to see this through. She was determined to expose Vera for the scammer that she was, and to get back what was rightfully hers. As she walked, Maya's mind began to wander. She thought about Max, and how he had seemed so genuine when they met. She wondered if he was in on Vera's scam, or if he was just an innocent bystander. Maya's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone ringing. She pulled it out of her pocket and saw that it was Max calling. "Hey," Maya said, trying to sound casual. "Hey," Max replied. "I was just wondering if you'd like to grab coffee with me again. I had a great time talking to you the other day." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure if she should trust Max, but at the same time, she couldn't deny the connection that they had shared. "Sure," Maya said finally. "I'd love to grab coffee with you again." As Maya hung up the phone, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. She had no idea what the future held, but she was determined to find out. Over the next few days, Maya and Max met up several times. They talked about everything and nothing, and Maya found herself feeling more and more comfortable around him. But despite the connection that they shared, Maya couldn't shake off the feeling that Max was hiding something from her. She didn't know what it was, but she was determined to find out. As they sat in a quiet cafe, sipping their coffee, Maya decided to confront Max about her suspicions. "Max," Maya said, her voice low, "I have to ask you something. What's your relationship with Vera?" Max's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Maya thought she saw a glimmer of guilt in his eyes. "I work for her," Max said finally. "I'm her business partner." Maya's eyes widened. "Her business partner?" Max nodded. "Yes, we're working on a few projects together." Maya's mind was racing. She didn't know what to believe, but she knew that she had to be careful. "I see," Maya said finally. "Well, I should probably get going. It was nice talking to you, Max." As Maya stood up to leave, Max caught her arm. "Maya, wait," Max said. "I need to tell you something. But firstly, I will like to apologize to you. After our conversation at Vera's house the other day, Vera told me some things about you, and judging from how you were when we met, I knew you were different from what she said." Maya asked. "What did she say about me?" Max answered, saying, "She said you were a spoilt brat, and you're mentally unstable, which is why we have to get you to sign the documents handing over the properties left to you by your deceased parents. Sell them and use them for the project we are working on together." Maya smiled sadly and said, "She used the same excuse the last time when she collected everything from me before and people believed her. But I'm glad you are different." Is he really different, she thought? But she decided to trust him because in the past few days he has showed her so much care and affection, and she was willing to bet on that. She survived losing everything before. If she turned out to be wrong about him, she will survive again. But she desperately hoped she was right, because it would break her nonetheless. Max stared at her, her internal struggle obvious to him, and he vowed in his heart at that moment to help her and gain her trust. Max held her hands and said to her, "Maya, you have endured so much pain, and I want you to know that I'm going to help you. It's okay if you don't trust me yet. I know with time my true intentions would be obvious to you. Let's work together to destroy Vera and regain all that you have lost." Maya felt relieved that this time around there's one person around that is on her side. She felt like she could conquer the world. Through Max, Maya got to find out that Vera and David actually killed her parents. Vera and David were business partners with her father, George, but they lacked integrity as they embezzled money from the projects. And when Maya's dad found out, they connived together and killed him. Unfortunately, her mother, Mia, happened to witness the whole ordeal, and she was also killed in order to cover up their evil doings, and automatically. Because people knew how close the two families were, it didn't raise any suspicion when they decided to adopt little Maya. Tears welled up in Maya's eyes to the injustice her parent went through, but she also wondered how close Max and Vera was for her to tell him these things. But he said he got to know by accident, and since she trusted him as their business partner, she didn't feel bad about it. Maya wondered how evil people like that could get away with their wrongdoings, and she also felt pity for Ella. She was unlucky with the kind of parent she had, but to her surprise, Ella wasn't their biological daughter. Vera has fertility issues and adopted Ella just to make her life seem more stable, and it was part of the reason they moved to a smaller town. Maya vowed in her heart to take good care of Ella and also give her a better life, and also put an end to evil works of Vera and David. Though Max knew about most of the evil doings of Vera and David, but he didn't have proof, so Maya decided to hire a private investigator to find out more about the properties and also get any dirt on Vera and David. Finding dirt on them wasn't easy, as the testimonies of the maids that used to live with them in the estate were not enough to be used as evidence in court. They needed visual evidence, and when they thought all hope was lost, Max suggested they should check the house plan and see if they can find something hidden that wasn't visible to ordinary eyes. And during their search, they found out that in Maya's dad's study, there was a hidden camera on the wall covered by a huge painting. Wow! What a genius, Maya thought. She thanked her stars that Vera didn't decide to renovate the house, or she would have found out about the hidden camera. The task left at hand is to retrieve the memory card and see if there's anything worthy on it. Maya desperately prayed that there will be, so she can avenge the injustice of her parents as well as hers and innocent Ella. Vera felt uneasy as she waited patiently for Max to come. After Maya confronted her, she spoke to Max, and they planned on how to totally destroy Maya. She believed in Max, and she knows he wouldn't betray her. He was just a tool for her, though. I will discard him once I'm done with him, she thought. Vera's thought pondered to David, such a weak man, she said. She reminisced on how he was trembling when she killed George and Mia, and how she had to slap some sense into him. She wished she had not married him. She didn't need someone like him in her life. He was so weak that she had to ship him off to a mental asylum after the whole ordeal. She couldn't risk him spewing contents of the incident to anyone, and she had more than enough money to shut in up for life, and she was about to acquire more. He was also part of the reason she moved here, so people who knew him wouldn't constantly bug her of his whereabouts. Her thoughts ran far and wide while waiting for Max. Max got to the entrance of Vera's house and ringed the doorbell. Vera welcomed him with a smile and said, "Max, what took you so long?" "I had to make sure Maya didn't suspect a thing," responded Max. "Okay, good," Vera replied. They spoke at length on how Max would get Maya to sign the documents under the pretense that it is to acquire a property in her name. She would be so happy. She wouldn't read through the documents, said Vera. Max smiled and said, "Yes, she's in love with me, and I'm sure she wouldn't doubt a thing." Vera felt a sense of triumph, not knowing this is going to be her downfall. Maya and Rachel, the private investigator, were able to retrieve the memory card of the camera, and it had the detailed event of the incident. Maya cried so much watching her parents die in the hands of the two people they trusted, but it would soon be over. She's closer than she ever was, she consoled herself. Max handed over all the documents he got from Vera to Maya, got her to sign them, then took it to Vera. Vera was humming a victorious tune as she signed the documents. Unknown to her, she was transferring the ownership of the properties back to its rightful owner, as Max had already switched the documents right under her nose. Some minutes after signing the documents, Vera opens a bottle of her favorite wine to celebrate this victory when the doorbell rang and she went to open it. Vera was surprised to see Maya, Max, and some men in uniform. Oh, wait. It's the police, Vera realized. Before she couldn't understand what was happening, she was dragged out of the house with nothing and was told she's being arrested for murder, among all other charges. She started screaming and wailing, but it was to no avail as she was dragged away. For the first time in years, Maya felt true relief. She felt that she could truly move on from the past that constantly hunted her, and she has two amazing people in her life that she can start this new journey with, Max and Ella. Vera was sentenced to death, and David was confined in the mental health center for proper treatment and diagnosis. Max was sentenced to do community service for a year, and also given a fine to pay because he was in a way an accomplice. But since he helped with bringing Vera down, his punishment was lesser. Few months later, as Maya sat in the park with Ella, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she had made the right decision in adopting Ella, and in choosing to focus on the love and joy that Ella brought into her life. As the sun began to set, Maya looked up at the sky and whispered a silent thank you. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that she was strong enough to face whatever challenges came her way. And as she held Ella's hand and walked towards the future, Maya knew that she was ready to embrace whatever adventures and opportunities came her way. She was no longer the scared and lost girl she had been when she first arrived in town. She was Maya, a survivor, a caregiver, and a beacon of hope for the future. And with that, Maya said goodbye to the pain of her past and embraced the promise of a brighter tomorrow. She was ready to face whatever came her way, knowing that she had the strength and resilience to overcome any obstacle. She was ready to write a new chapter in her story, one filled with love, forgiveness, and hope. And as she looked towards the horizon, she knew that the best was yet to come.